Can we bring cloaks back into style? Today we're going to try to make ourselves a medieval safety pin. Here's our draft of our pennanular brooch. Now it gets its name from its shape. Pen meaning semi or almost, and annular meaning circle. I always keep wire around for jobs like this. I can easily bend it and then unbend it later to see roughly how much material I need. So holding it up to our tape measure, we've got roughly 7 1/4 inches here. So I'm going to cut it at probably 5 or 6 inches, and then if I need to cut it shorter as we stretch this thing out, we can definitely do that. We're breaking the Normandin using copper instead of steel. Here we're just making a mark, and then we're going to cut through the bar. This is roughly a 5 or 6 inch piece. Should be just about perfect. Now we just have to prep our tools and get our fire lit. Here I'm just making sure the draft is going the right way, and then we get our forge started. I accidentally put clinkers in the fire, so I gotta scrape those out. And here we go. Now copper melts at quite a bit lower temperature than what steel does. And for that reason, I'm not gonna heat it up much more than this dull orange color. Now it appears a bit brighter on camera, but this is kind of a dull orange, dull red. I don't really want to risk getting it any hotter than that because we don't want it to melt up in the fire. And now it's on to the fun part. As usual, I'm just going to work this down to a nice sharp taper, and then we'll start another taper just behind it. This is how I start all of my leaves. You can see I'm really holding back my hammer swing. This copper moves so much easier. It's way softer than steel, so I'm just being careful not to work it down too far. I was a little concerned in one spot, but it ended up working out in the long run. Now that the slug is formed, we're going to start flattening this thing out to actually make our leaf shape. Now once I'm satisfied with how this is going, I'll take it over to the edge of the anvil and we'll work it out some more just to get those edges of the leaf nice and thin, leaving the center a little bit thicker. As I'm working, sometimes it's nice to have a quick reference, so we'll use some soapstone on our anvil face. This is just letting me know about how long I need to make this half. And now I'm going to start stretching it out. Now this bar was quite a bit thicker than what I wanted, so we ended up stretching it out and thinning it at the same time, working it to the final shape that we desired. Partway through the process, I saw something weird going on in the shop. Carol, do you like the cat now? No? And now we get to do this all over again on the other side. We're going to work these tapers out, again being careful with that second taper, making sure it's not too thin at the end. And then we're going to start to flatten that leaf out. Once we're satisfied with that, we'll flatten the edges out a little bit more. You can see I've got more reference points on the anvil, and we're going to check it. It looks like it's pretty close. Once this is all done, we'll move over to the vise and we'll start making this thing look pretty. I'm going to do what's called a reverse twist, so we're going to just twist it back and forth in opposite directions, trying to make it look really nice as we go along. I'm using these old pliers that I actually ground the ends smooth on so that they don't mar up the copper because it's so soft. I could make a special twisting wrench, but this copper twists pretty easily, and this stock is all different size all the way down the bar. So this is just, it's easy, it works. And once that half is finished and looking good, we'll flip it around, and now I'm just twisting the other side to get it to match as close as we can. Soon enough, we're back to the anvil. We gotta clamp this thing down and start chiseling some veins into our leaf. Trying to make it look more like a leaf than an arrowhead. It's kind of tedious and time consuming, but it really makes those leaves pop and look nice. Then we just have to flip it around, clamp the other side, and make sure that the other side looks good as well. Again, if they're a little different, that's fine. That's why this is art. When this is finished, we'll go to the vise and we'll start our little curly cues on the end. These are just purely for decoration. I just think it looks nicer this way. It's fancy and it just adds that nice flair to the piece. Now we have to do the other half, as usual, going back and forth. This one got a bit weird, so I just had to use the vise to squish it back flat again. That's why we have these tools. We can use them in multiple different ways. I found an old chunk of pipe in the corner that was just about perfect for our inside diameter, so I'm just hand bending this cold, trying to get it close. Once it was close, I just used this mandrel to make this a little bit more circular and even and make sure everything looked good and clean. and then we bent the leaves a little bit so they weren't just flat. And there's our lovely pennanular circle. Now I need to make the pin so that this thing's actually useful. So you'll see I've got this copper, and this really needs to get tapered out. So I'm just stretching this as far as I can. This is going to be the part that wraps around the brooch, so I'm flattening that a bit. Of course I misplaced my hardy tool, so I just used the corner of the anvil to cut it off. Not a big deal, just don't want to swing too far into it. And then I just used my pliers and bent it back and forth until it released. A little bit of cleanup later, and I came back to clean it up with the hammer and flatten it out a little bit more and stretch it. Once that was done, I could take the brooch and reference these two pieces together. Here's a quick way to reference how much material that you'll need to wrap around this thing. Just kind of roll it and make a rough mark, adding a little extra length onto it. I don't want it real tight. And I found my cutoff hardy again, so that's good. Now that that's cut to length, we'll clean it up a little bit with a file. And after that, we can start bending it to connect these two together. This part went pretty smooth. I ended up just going to my scrolling tongs. It was a little bit easier to do in the moment. I bent it around till it was close, and then just trued it up a little bit on the horn of the anvil. Once I thought things were looking pretty good, I took the other part of the brooch and just kind of finagled them to try to get them connected together. Always takes a little bit of practice and a little bit of messing around to get it. Once it was close, I could close it together with the hammer and tighten everything up. But not too tight, because this thing actually has to move. There, you can see I'm just testing this out. It had a couple sticky spots, so I took it to the anvil horn. I just took a couple of the high spots down on the pennanular part. And once that was moving all smooth, we're all finished up and ready to test it out. Alright, let's compare it to our original sketch. There's our sketch. There's our pennanular brooch. I'd say that's pretty stinking close. Yeah, I'd wear that. I like it. The last step was just to clean it up a little bit with some really fine grit sandpaper. I just wanted to take off any potential sharp spots or problem areas. And of course, I forgot to sign the thing back when it would have been easy to do so. Can we bring cloaks back into style? It's no wonder that they were around in some form or another for so long. They're easy to make, they're easy to use, and they're very versatile. Now this is just an old bed sheet, but I'll show you how the pennanular brooch works. Like a modern safety pin, the principle is quite simple. We just need to take the pointy end and insert it through the fabrics we want to hold together. I pre-punched a few holes just to make this easier. Now once we've got our fabric bundled together, we're going to use this semi-annular hole, and we'll stick it through there. Now, we simply rotate the pin ever so slightly till it's locked into place. And there's our fabric, nice and tightly held together. Now with the cloak, we can even accessorize. I quite like this look. This one's a little bit fancier than you might have found, depending on who owned it. They came in all different shapes and sizes. They were made of all types of metals, and they're really a pretty common archaeological find. A lot of the ones we see were quite simple, essentially just a hoop with a pin. That's all you need. It doesn't need to be fancy to work. So the common folk probably would have just had a simple ring. It wasn't really meant to be flashy or shown off, just to hold your clothing or bundle of fabric together. But we wanted this one to be a little bit nicer, a little bit fancier, kind of an upper class look. And I'm quite happy with how this one turned out. I'll probably make a couple more like it later on. I've got more than enough copper to do it. Let us know what you think. Should cloaks be brought back into style again? Let us know down below. Thank you for joining us along on the journey. If you want to continue to keep up with us, make sure to go ahead and subscribe to our channel. You can check out the links to some of our storefronts down in the description below. And we've actually just opened up a new Patreon page. If you want to subscribe to our Patreon, you'll help us with our goal of producing more and better content. We want to be able to show people what we do and even teach some of what we do through the media of an online video. So if you really want to see some more, that'll just help us free up some time and free up some resources to be able to focus on video production. It takes a fair bit of time and resources to be able to produce something of quality that we can share. And right now we're really just focused on keeping our business running and keeping the bills paid. So if you want to help us out, we're continuing to try to grow our web stores, and we now have Patreon. Thank you again everybody for watching. We'll see you on the next one.